Welcome to Lawyer Business Advantage. This podcast is dedicated to helping attorneys earn more money, get better clients, and spend more time with family. I'm your host, Alay and founder of Law Firm Success Group. Smart business guidance for small law firms begins in 3, 2, 1. And it's my pleasure to welcome to Lawyer Business Advantage Ryan Kimler, owner of the Net Profit CFO. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Alay. I'm happy to be here and excited for our discussions today.
Yeah, me too. We've known each other a while, but we've never really had a chance to dig into to your practice and some of the ways that you help law firms. Really looking forward to getting into it. Today, we're talking about hiring from a finance standpoint, and hiring is such a big challenge for law firms. Typically, when we're getting into it, the attorney is overwhelmed. They're spending too much time, doing some kind of work, whether it's actually working with clients or too much time running the firm or too much time out there doing marketing. And so having someone else to come in and supplement that is so important. Ryan, when you're working with clients, now how do you typically get into that hiring conversation with them?
Yeah, so it really starts from a workflow capacity standpoint, typically, right? The firm kind of realizes that they're getting too busy, they realize that they have a need to hire soon, and then the questions start coming in as far as, what's reasonable compensation? How are we going to compensate our people, but also not shoot ourselves in the foot from a profitability standpoint? How do we ensure that we're getting a really good return on the talent that we're going to be hiring while also staying competitive in the marketplace, which right now it seems to be a pretty tough marketplace.
It certainly is, although it's better than it was a couple years ago. It's loosened up
Yeah.
just a little bit. Believe it or not, those of you that are trying to hire, it used to be worse. So, although it's not measurably better.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
So I'd love to dig into how much should we pay the person? Because that's a question we get all the time as well. We have our coaches are across the country, so we can usually get some geographic benchmark. But
Yep.
how do you kind of answer that question with your clients?
Yeah, so I typically start with I actually just ask the attorney, what's really competitive salary wise, salary base. What kind of a base are we talking about? And I can really work with any base. I mean, you have to get to whatever's competitive in your area. That's the bottom line, right? Or else you're not going to get somebody hired, right? So what we really have to do is once we know that base, is let's figure out, okay, what's the total cost of the employee though? So let's add in 401k, other benefits that you have, healthcare, taxes. Let's put estimates for those. So let's just say we're hiring an attorney, $125,000 base. I would say it's probably reasonable depending on the benefits package that you have. I mean, there's a lot of factors here, but let's just say the total comes out to 140,000 for the year that you're going to spend on this employee before bonuses. Then from there, we really need to start looking at, okay, well, is that doable for the firm I always ask two questions. Number one, can that be profitable? And number two, can that be scalable? So in other words, if you had the work, could we hire 10 attorneys, same scenario, doing the same load of work, and continue to scale? And so, from that standpoint, we're going to look at, what's the work that they're going to be doing? How much revenue are they generating? So on and so forth. And looking at, is that really profitable? Is that doable? And that's really where I start.
Got it. Got it. Well, we take a similar approach as well, but probably not as detail oriented as you do. So I'd love to bounce some of these back of the envelope things that we do off of you and get your perspective on them.
Yep.
So when someone is looking to bring an attorney on board or a paralegal, someone who can bill and
Mm-hmm.
generate revenue for the firm, so they're a profit center. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we usually take the approach of, okay, what is it? How many hours do they need to break even, to pay for themselves, if you will? And then
Yep.
we just ask the attorney, hey, do you have that kind of work? And usually the answer comes back yes, because typically it's on the order of about, if it's priced appropriately, it's on the order of about 10 hours a week, whether it's a paralegal or an attorney. That's kind of what they need to bill out to pay for themselves. Is that kind of the experience you've seen, or you seen a different number on average?
Yeah, no, that seems pretty similar. So it seems to me, when you're talking about billers, the gold standard across the country seems to be like 1,500 hours a year, right? I mean, there are some firms that require more than that, right? And all the way up, I've seen all the way up to 1,800. But when you take, 1,500 hours a year requirement, I typically divide by 49 weeks, take 2 weeks out for vacation and things like that. You're talking, in order to hit 1,500 hours a year, you're talking about 30 hours. And usually that gives the firm a good return, somewhere in the 3 to 4x return kind of a number. And that's usually what I tell firms to shoot for. And so it completely makes sense if you're getting a 3 to 4x return at about 30 hours, that yeah, 10 hours would absolutely be break even. And that completely makes sense.
Totally. And then to your point, Ryan, when you're looking at the salary of the employee, that's not the total cost. There's a lot of things that need to be added in. If you are an attorney entrepreneur who is very generous with your bonuses, with your compensation package up over and above the salary, maybe throw in, mark that up by 50% to get to the total cost. That's a really generous compensation package.
Yeah.
So that's on the, I guess from a budgeting standpoint, that would be on the way conservative side. It's probably not going to be that much. If you want to be on the really aggressive side on your budgeting, so what's the smallest, addition I can put on? Maybe what, 20% on top of the base. Oftentimes that won't cover the employee. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just taxes alone are typically in that 7 to 8% range, just on
yep.
the employer side. And then, obviously, typically healthcare benefits are in there as well. So yeah, I mean, I think 20% is probably on the low end, maybe down to 15, 16, but I think that's cutting it pretty tight.
Yeah, so that gives you some benchmarking there. The true cost of that employee is probably going to be somewhere if you mark up their salary by, 20, 25% to 50% on the high side.
Yeah.
Um, you're going to have their full cost hopefully mostly captured and maybe even some to spare.
Yep.
Um, okay, awesome. That's really, really helpful. And by the way, these tips are fantastic for attorneys. Tell us a little bit about what you do at the Net Profit CFO.
Sure. Yeah. So the audience has just gotten a little taste of it. I mean, so I work completely with our firm works completely with attorneys and really coaching them on the financial side of things. We are all of our backgrounds are in accounting and finance. We are experts when it comes to the numbers, when it comes to profitability, really helping law firms grow, be more profitable, and also have more cash. And that having more cash in your business really means two things. Number one, it means that your company can continue to grow and be healthy. And number two, it also means that you as the owner are compensated the way that you want to be. Everybody gets in business to, really make money, right? And everybody wants they have goals for yourself and a certain level of compensation. And cash flow is really what's going to get you there. And so at the Net Profit CFO, that's what we help business owners do, have a growing and more profitable law firm, which turns into more cash.
Love that. Love that. And we're talking today about hiring. We've gone through some really good tips for positions that bring in revenue for the firm. And I don't know about your perspective, Ryan, but for me, that's the easy one.
Yep.
The challenging one is adding on not only employees, but consultants and services that don't necessarily bring in revenue. Things like, okay, I'm going to go hire a digital marketing person, or I'm going to hire um, an assistant, or, I'm going to hire, well, I don't know, an IT person. So, the
Yep.
things that maybe an office manager, things that don't actually, you can't bill them to clients.
Yep.
And we call those people cost centers. And Ryan, what is your approach? Because we have kind of I think it's kind of a unique approach in how we handle it, Law Firm Success Group, building in those cost centers. But when you're working with clients, kind of how do you approach that?
Yeah, so I really start by looking at need, right? That's number one, and opportunity cost is number two, right? I mean, if as an attorney, right, the easy thing to look at is, well, if I wasn't spending these hours on admin or IT or whatever, I could bill it, right? That's the easy thing to say, but the bigger opportunity, especially if you're a partner, is, your marketing hours and closing cases, right? Because realistically, when you're doing consults and closing new cases, you're getting paid, you're in the future, you're going to be getting paid a much higher hourly rate than just what you're billing. And so that's one of the first couple of things that I'll look at. But I'll also look at, just from a profitability standpoint, how profitable is the firm overall today before we add on those additional expenses. And because for a little while, you're probably going to take on those expenses and it's going to take you a little while to get a return, before you can open up capacity to get more cases. And so I'll really kind of evaluate and look at, if we brought on these additional expenses, what does that do to the profitability? And then also put an estimate and kind of forecast in how long is our profitability going to be reduced and by how much.
Yeah, that's spot on. I actually just were talking with a new client a few weeks ago, and they had just, read a book, and awesome that they read a business book, really happy with that. And they came to the conversation with me and said, "Look, I just read this fantastic book. It's basically told me that I need to focus on, the most valuable thing that I can do for the firm, and that's billing out my time." So it said all the things that, are basically less than my hourly rate. I should outsource all of those. And so I want to hire an IT person. I want to hire a virtual assistant. I want to hire a bookkeeper. Like, and she went through this long list of things that she wanted to hire. I said, "That's great. Can you afford that?" And she said, "Well, that's the problem because I don't think I can." Um, and this is, I think, the rub that a lot of owners kind of bump into. They get it because they've heard this often enough. A lot, as an attorney, most of the things that are not focused on practicing, if you outsource those, you can outsource them for a lower hourly rate than your hourly rate. But to your point, Ryan, you bump into this whole issue of cash flow. It's great in theory, but then the reality hits and you just don't have the cash to hire all of those people. And so you kind of have to just grind through it, and hire those people one at a time as you have the cash flow to bring them on board.
Yep.
And Ryan, when you're talking with your clients, are there any rules of thumb that you use you can share with our audience? Like, okay, I've got enough padding and enough cash flow now to maybe make an investment, or if it's, lower than this amount or whatever, it's too tight and I shouldn't really invest right now.
Yeah, so I typically work with firms and have them shoot for a consistent profitability of 20 to 25%. Now, again, this is taking into account that you as the owner are going to be on payroll. Okay, so typically I see, I want payroll to be, for the firm as a whole, somewhere between 40 and 45%. Sometimes when you add in bonuses, it ends up being a little more than that. Your marketing probably needs to be somewhere between 10 and 15, depending on the space that you're in. Maybe it's a little more competitive, maybe a little higher than that. And then your overhead tends to be somewhere between 20 and 25. And that's the category that as you grow, you'll probably be less than that percentage, especially as we've moved in, post-COVID area, and a lot of
Yeah.
attorneys are sharing spaces and working from home and things like that. And so usually that overhead category is where you can buy back some percentage points. But typically, I'm really comfortable with a law firm having a profitability of 20 to 25%. Uh, and the key important thing to remember is, that's not going to be net cash flow. You still have to pay taxes on that money. If you've got any debt, you're going to have to take that out of your profits as well. And so really having, 20 to 25% net income is going to typically for most firms, that's going to ensure that you are going to have positive cash flow, which means you're adding money to the bank, um, past and beyond your distributions to yourself. And so that's the threshold that I really don't like to drop below. Obviously, as your firm grows, that does take cash as well. And so there are periods of time where it is okay to do that. But what's really important is that we're measuring and we know how long that period's going to be. And that after that period is done, we really do see the firm trend back towards efficiency and back towards 20, 25% net income. And that's really, my kind of my floor, if you will. That's my bottom level threshold where I want to be.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. I think that's incredibly helpful to have those specific guidelines and benchmarks. And attorney entrepreneurs, that's what you get when you bring on board a CFO like Ryan, is you have that really clear guidance of, look, you got to hit this, you got to hit that, and it makes growing your firm easier, and it gives you a lot more confidence in the decisions you want to make. Um, Speaking of floors, that's similar. We take uh, an approach at Law Firm Success Group called the Law Firm Blueprint, and that uses this concept of floors too. And if you can imagine a growing law firm, um, almost like we're filling up a building with multiple floors in it. And each floor gets full when the capacity of work fills up the floor. And you move to the next floor, what that means is you've got to hire somebody.
Yep.
And it's pretty easy to figure out the revenue generating positions or those profit centers. It's a lot harder to figure out those cost centers. And so what we've done is you move to the next floor is oftentimes hiring on another cost center. And we've kind of spec'd that out in terms of hire this person first, hire that person on your second floor, hire that person on your third floor. So we've kind of taken the thinking out of, when you should hire a bookkeeper. I think that's the ground floor, if I remember right. Um,
Yep.
when you should hire a HR person, when you should hire an IT person, when you should hire a payroll person, when you should hire an office manager. So we've taken all the guesswork out of that. And for most firms, once they hit capacity, and we have a way of figuring that out called the 20-10-5 rule. We also have, that's time. We also have revenue benchmarks, which is the money to bring it in. We also have employee benchmarks, which is the number of employees. That'll tell them, okay, I'm full. It's time to move to the next floor. And as part of doing that, here's who I've got to hire next. And that works out really well. And I think it could go really well with the benchmarks that you're putting out too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That sounds like a great framework for sure.
Well, Ryan, I'm looking forward to having you back next week. Really, in about 5 minutes, we'll be chatting again. But as we're wrapping up here, just tell me some things that you're really looking forward to with Net Profit CFO over the next year or so.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So I do have a book coming out, Bottom Line Profits, all about helping attorneys improve their profits. I am the host of the Net Profit podcast as well. So I'm always looking forward to doing shows there. And I have some really great guests come on, including yourself. Um, and then I've got a couple of conferences that I am speaking at later this summer. So I'm excited about that as well. We've got a lot of good things happening at the Net Profit CFO. So I'm very excited about the year to come.
Awesome. Ryan, congratulations on your success. And if people want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, best place to do that is netprofitcfo.com. Right in the upper right-hand corner, I've got a link to my calendar. You're welcome to book a complimentary 30-minute session with me, have an initial kind of strategy session. I could probably help you add some profitability to your firm. I'd be happy to have that conversation with you. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Ryan Kimler. That's Kimler. Google always does a great job of, bringing LinkedIn profiles right to the top. And there's not very many Ryan Kimlers, so you'll find me pretty quickly.
Awesome. And real quick, where can they find the Net Profit podcast?
Yeah, Net Profit Podcast. You're going to find it on all the platforms where you listen to podcasts. Spotify, Apple, Google. We're on all of them. Stitcher, I think, as well. So we're on all the platforms for sure.
Awesome. And quick shout out to Doug Sandler and Turnkey Productions because they produce both of our podcasts. So they
Yes,
do a
absolutely.
fantastic job. Awesome.
Yes,
Ryan, thank you so much for being on the show today.
absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And that's a wrap for this episode of the Lawyer Business Advantage podcast. One thing that would really help both us and other new potential listeners is for you to rate this show and leave a comment in iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you tune in to listen. And I want to hear from you, so connect with me on LinkedIn and let me know what you think of this episode. And if you are a solo or an owner of a small law firm and you're looking to earn more money, attract better clients, or reduce your stress, we would love to talk with you to see how we can help. Request your free law firm assessment by visiting lawfirmsuccessgroup.com. Again, that URL is lawfirmsuccessgroup.com. We look forward to talking with you soon. Thank you for listening. My name is Alay Yajnik. Until next time, remember, you can seize freedom. You can embrace happiness. You can build your perfect practice.